In terms of the Panama invasion, where were you at in your career when that spun up?
Been in the regiment for a couple of years. I was a sergeant by this point, and I was in the Ranger Regiment's reconnaissance detachment. So we were doing strategic reconnaissance missions for all of the special operations forces. And I got notified for just cause about 3 days before the initial hit went down. And the regimental reconnaissance team from the regimental reconnaissance forces from the Ranger Regiment flew down to Panama 24 hours before the H hour, the initial invasion, and provided theater level CSAR for the first night of the invasion. Then it was take down the airfields, defeat the Panamanian Defense Forces like you and the rest of the special operations community. The mission inside the mission was go get Noriega. Yeah. And 2 weeks into it, we've got him and put him on a bird and sent him home. So
it seems like a pretty heavy oversimplification of that whole process.
It was, sure.
But, if we can take a few steps back, I'm curious, back then, there's no 24-hour news cycle, there's no internet. What was your level of understanding, leading up to that was A, even the potential, B, that it might, happen, or like, what was your kind of level of intelligence as it related to that prior to it?
Yeah, so because I was in the reconnaissance forces, the average ranger in the line battalion would not have got this kind of fidelity, but because I'm part of the reconnaissance force and working kind of at the theater level for a couple of years by this point, I get kind of the big picture overview. So the fall of 1989, we were getting notified pretty regularly that stuff was heating up down in Panama, and hey, this thing may go down in Panama. And this is the point in the U.S. military where people use the language like, if you ever go to war, like you could serve an entire career and never deploy to combat, which seems unimaginable to people today. But this is how old I am, man. We used to have the old school pagers with the super secret code on there. And the pagers went off in the fall of 89, probably 4 or 5 times. Like, this is for real. Drop your stuff, get your kit on, get ready to go. And then at the last second, they would call the mission off. And so December 19th, it would have been like December 16th, 17th, the whole unit, really the whole special operations community is signing out on block leave the next day, and the pagers go off.
Wow.
And it's, instead of signing your leave form and going back to Iowa on
Christmas
vacation,
in Panama.
that's right, you're gonna board. And when the pagers went off, all of my buddies were like, this is BS because it's going to get turned off at the last second. And I was like, I don't think they're going to play with that many people's leave form. Like, this is for real. So I kind of had an idea of not just the whole geopolitics, but I kind of had an idea of the whole, what was known as Operation Blue Spoon. Like, the real reason this special operations force is going into Panama is to get Noriega. And I kind of had the whole theater level plan before I even flew down there.
Looking back on it now, no different than any of us looking back at Afghanistan and Iraq. Like, do you think from a macro foreign policy standpoint that was the right call for the United States at the time?
I look back on it today and it looks very different from this perspective. It almost feels like a preseason game. Like, hey, we got really punched in the face in Vietnam, and before we fight the next big one, World War III,
shakeout patrol.
We kind of need a little preseason game before we actually start the regular season. I know that's not what it was, but I also think a lot of that was just, hey, this guy is a nightmare, so let's deploy a small package to go in there and to get this guy. Yeah. And of course, every time you deploy guys to combat, it can be, it can turn ugly real fast, like it did for a handful of dudes down there.
Yeah. Was there a point at which your involvement there got to where you really felt like this is the real deal?
Yeah.
And what was that like?
My first firefight, I got into a couple of firefights in Panama. The first one, I didn't really see the enemy because I'm flying in on a Special Ops Black Hawk from one target to the next, and the Black Hawk comes under pretty heavy fire. They have to land and kind of put out the smoke on the aircraft is not doing well. They have to do an emergency landing, but I'm on the aircraft while it's taking fire. And for me, that was the first time, like, I was just trying to figure out what are those noises and why is it doing that?
Yeah.
The first time I'm actually in a firefight is on a hilltop up next to the Costa Rican border in Panama. And My first firefight, man, it was just so overwhelming. All of the noise, all of the sensations, everything that's going on around me. And I've been trained for this for a couple of years, but it's hard to just keep everything, to grasp everything that's going on. And I had a Grenada vet next to me. And that Grenada vet was kind of narrating my first firefight for me. Hey, here's what the enemy's doing. Here's what I want you to do next. All right, prepare yourself for this. And had it not been for that Grenada vet, man, there's no way I would have responded as well as I did that first firefight.
Wow.
Interesting story, though, Mike. His first firefight in Grenada, he had a guy from the U.S. attempt to rescue the hostages in Iran from Operation Eagle Claw next to him.
Doing the same thing.
And that dude had a guy from Vietnam next to him. And honestly, that kind of mentoring warriors through their first firefight. It's been going on for centuries, really worldwide. But
yeah, man, that's really neat.
Had it not been for that grizzly old Grenada Ranger next to me in my first firefight, I probably would have done something pretty stupid.
Yeah. What was the outcome of that firefight?
Yeah, nobody really got on our end. Nobody really got hit in this exchange of gunfire. It just became pretty cool, actually. Like, all right, this is what I thought it was going to be. Without ruining the surprise, man, by the time I get to Somalia, it is a very, very different experience. But my first time getting shot at, it ended up just being a lot of adrenaline and pretty cool by the time I got out of it.
Did you guys take out any?
Yeah, I killed some bad guys. Yeah. Sure.
Do you remember what the...
No, I don't remember what the body count was, but I do remember, man, Panama, the PDF, the Panamanian Defense Forces, they were quick to quit. Literally, in a couple of cases, they let their weapons go, set their weapons down and ran away. One dude locked himself in his own handcuffs and turned himself into me like, hey, I quit, don't kill me.
Yeah, wow. How did Panama wrap up for you? Like, what was the rest of the...
I stuck around. Yeah, I stuck around. The second phase of the operation is defeat the Panamanian Defense Forces, sent some guys to David to try to help out there. And then ultimately, by the time we had cornered Noriega in the Vatican embassy, by the time Noriega surrendered, some U.S. Marshals put him on a C-130 and flew him back to the States. And I'm back on an airplane like 2 days later, heading back to the States.
Did you get in more gunfights after that first one?
Yeah, not anything like that Black Hawk or that first firefight. Yeah.
All right, so you guys come home, and then not long after, the Gulf War spins up.
Yeah.
And so now you're activated again.
Yeah. I'm working for 1st Ranger Battalion. Although I serve at the headquarters of the Ranger Regiment, my battalion that I do reconnaissance for is in Savannah. And Savannah gets activated and deployed over to Kuwait as part of Desert Storm. And they send the reconnaissance team in early to do some recon on the border of Iraq and Kuwait. And one of our recon elements gets in a firefight in Kuwait as well. And I'm the guy doing satellite communications back to the Ranger base, kind of, working this geopolitics over a handset, under fire.
Yeah. That was such a quick incursion. I mean, I was in junior high when that happened, but I remember watching it and even at that age, not really understanding much as far as how the world works in that regard. I was still surprised just from, hearing stories of Vietnam and stuff like that it's like, oh shit, the country's going to war again, and it's like a few days later, it's like, well, that's it. It's like, what? Was that kind of how you get it?
Yeah, man. What was crazy about that is how overwhelmingly, I don't think anybody, even the big brains in DC, expected it to be that successful that fast. So I remember we flew in, 1st Ranger Battalion jumped into the Kuwait City airfield and then moved. It basically did a movement of contact to the border. I went out ahead of them and went down the Valley of Destruction between Kuwait City and back to the Kuwaiti border. And man, the carnage on that road, it was just like a vivid, holy smokes, man. We laid waste here. And it's really like we gave it to them from every angle.
Yeah.
And I never really saw in Panama that kind of carnage, bodies hanging off of smoking vehicles and just stacked up, just pushed off the road with a bulldozer and stacked, 2 stories high. That's how bad the carnage was. And
that was all. It was primarily our Air Force. I mean, it was all airstrikes
right.
coming in. Do you remember, especially with where you were at, was there a lot of A-10s doing that?
So about a 5-month-ish air campaign from about 20 nations that just hammered the Iraqi military. And then when we finally start the ground war, we transition from Operation Desert Shield to Desert Storm. By this point, they're in full-scale retreat and running as fast as they can, with the exception of one hardcore Iraqi unit, the Republican Guard. All the rest of them are just hightailing back to Baghdad as fast as they can get there, and hammering away with Tomahawk cruise missiles, with F-16s, F-15s, and A-10s, just blowing stuff up like crazy.
Amongst all that carnage, was there an image during that time that stands out to you that you kind of flashback to almost? I mean,
I still remember seeing Iraqi mechanized commanders dead bodies hanging off of the sides of their vehicles that just got pushed off to the side of the road so that we can open up a thoroughfare to get combat forces to the border and then into Iraq. And I remember, like, they're just dangling off of the edge of their vehicles. Like, we really killed a lot of dudes this way.
Yeah.
And most of it was killed from 10,000, 30,000 feet in the air.
Yeah. Did that have an impact on you at all negatively at that time?
No.
I mean, how old are you at this point?
At this point, I'm probably 22.
Yeah.
21 or 22. I've been around death. Like you, a lot of guys get killed in training. A lot of guys, unfortunately, kill themselves in the military. So at this point, I've been around a lot of death. I just haven't seen that kind of death in those kind of numbers. That's the first time I really saw it.
Yeah.
And it made me think, like, this is the kind of carnage that they saw in World War II when they were, pushing the flank or pushing the front and advancing, across mainland Europe. Like, that's a lot of dead bodies right there.
Yeah. I can only assume that the level of desensitization is thorough and quick in that environment. I know for me it was, the time that I spent in Iraq, like, very quickly that kind of Band-Aid gets ripped off. Or, like, your first exposure to, like, legit combat scenarios and carnage like that, like, pretty quickly you're just like, this is just how it is, but at least for me that's how it was. But I guess I'm curious.
You would get this, the warriors from your audience that are watching will get this. Like, there was a point where I kind of rationalized it, like, it's just life and death, it's just killing and combat. Like, there used to be this mystique about it, and now that mystique is gone, and it is what it is, man.
So you wrap that up, you come home from Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and then you're back stateside for a couple of years before Somalia kicks off, and that's a whole different ball game as we know. I'm curious to get if you could kind of walk us through the spin up and then ultimately your time there.
Summer of 1993, Somalia is in the news in early 1993 because of a global humanitarian crisis. In fact, I don't know how many people are old enough to remember this, but there was a famine that created a drought caused by a famine, and hundreds of thousands of people were already dead, and they were dying 1,000, 3,000 a day. The whole world was watching this, and even the world's greatest musicians all came together, and they did this ginormous benefit concert called Live Aid, just trying to raise some money to buy some grain to send it into this Horn of Africa that's just decimated by the drought. And the country of Somalia especially, so the drought has affected Kenya, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, but Somalia had it the worst. And the country of Somalia has no government. So there's no military, no police force, and that means a dude with a gun can do whatever he wants to do. We're aware, and the special operations community, all branches of the military, the U.S. Special Operations Command's watching Somalia, but it doesn't really look like our fight, right? The United Nations is there handing out food. The U.S. Marines land. The way that the whole humanitarian effort started was with the U.S. Marines landing on the beaches and opening up supply routes and literally give them a bag of rice and a bag of beans, and hopefully they don't die today. That's the way this thing started. By the summer of 93, we all descend in Fort Bliss, Texas, El Paso, for a massive joint exercise. All branches of the military special operations forces are going to do this huge joint exercise. It'll happen all over America, but primarily they'll kind of stage out of Fort Bliss, Texas, El Paso. And we've been there for a week or two. 3rd Ranger Battalion is doing this. Other special mission units are all doing their thing. And we get a call. One company of Rangers gets a call that says, hey, stop training, load on aircraft, fly over to the East Coast. And nobody really knows what the deal is, right? Like there could be 3 or 4 places in the world right now. We'll figure it out when we get over there. And when we get there, they start showing us like, hey, stuff just went down yesterday in Somalia. ID'd this warlord, ambushed Pakistani United Nations forces while they were handing out food, and he murdered them all. So the UN Security Council met behind closed doors last night. And the UN Security Council said, somebody's got to go kill or capture ID'd. And so we're going to launch a force, a really very small surgical force to go kill or capture. I say that because people watch Black Hawk Down and they're like, wait a second, why are Rangers and SEALs and the rest of the special operations community handing out food? And I'm like, no, that's not what we did. Our stuff was kill or capture. The rest of the United Nations mission was food distribution and nation stability. But we get about 3 days notice and then load up on birds and fly over to Somalia. And it's go take down this guy and the top ranking leadership and get in, do your thing, and get out in 6 weeks. That's the plan.
And so that's the plan. Once your feet on the ground there, what were those first days like, and then ultimately leading up? Like, did it feel as though the sense of urgency to get in and do that job was a burning, kind of direction from the higher ups, or did you have some time to kind of get your bearings, or like what was the vibe like?
So nobody was there to kind of build up the logistics package for us, and there was no kind of mission creep. It was just we went from 0 to 100 miles an hour in one day over there, and I think the whole force was pretty much ready for that. I mean, that's kind of the way we deployed, the way we did business. I radically underestimated the Somali will to fight. So, I've seen dudes in Panama surrender. They surrendered in Desert Storm by the tens of thousands, literally like marched an entire division across the lines and said, we all surrender. When we arrived in Somalia, I'm this grizzly 24-year-old combat vet. Like I'm this super old guy with all kinds of combat experience, and nobody around me has deployed to combat. So I'm trying to kind of
be that
reassure
mentor.
them and kind of do for them what that dude did for me in my first firefight. And no exaggeration, we land on the first day at about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. We land on a C-5 in the airfield and go take over a airplane hangar by force, and that's going to become kind of our base of operations. And by 10 o'clock that night, we're under mortar fire. And the mortar fire is really accurate. In fact, it lands on the operations center roof and blows satellite antennas off of the roof.
Wow.
And I looked at my men. I'll never forget it. I looked at my men and I said, finally, America has found an enemy that's willing to fight back. That statement was a radical underestimation of their will to fight. To this day, Mike, I've never seen a place anywhere on earth that's willing to send everybody. And I mean every woman, every kid, every man, everybody go kill Americans. We don't care how many people have to die. Everywhere else, there's been a little bit of restraint, but not in Mogadishu, man. It is send everything, and we don't care how many people have to die in the process.
So in hearing that, I can only do two things. One is make an assumption, having not been through that, and two, seeing in Iraq and Afghanistan elements of their society that are similarly dedicated.
Yeah.
When you contrast that to Panama and Iraq, to me the clear thing that stands out, again, just in my mind, is hired guns
thugs,
that are, whatever. It's like, we're in the military, but like, this isn't my fight. And as soon as it gets bad, fuck this, I'm out of here.
Kind of like what Russia's getting today over in the Ukraine, right?
Versus I live here and you're not taking it.
Right.
Like I'll die
over
here
my dead body.
Yeah.
Will you take 1 inch of ground?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think even some of the senior commanders that had combat experience, I don't think that they were aware of how willing they were to send people to die. Like, I've never seen a society that was that willing to send people to their death. And two things that really, really, most of the guys that were over there in that fight with me struggled with is the Somali rebels would use women as human shields, and they were banking on the U.S. kind of sense of morality and the rules of war. Like, they would put a woman in a doorway with her legs spread and her arms on her hips, and then they would line up 2 or 3 deep behind her, and they would put their AK-47s between her arms and between her legs, and they would literally use her as a shield, hoping that we wouldn't shoot back. So now I've got gunners on top of my Humvee with a 50 cal, or I've got dudes with a Mag 58 machine gun saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, man. I know how to kill the enemy, but what do I do with this human shield in the doorway? Or worse, Dad would run across the street and get shot and killed while he's shooting at us with his AK-47. Then his 14-year-old son would run across the street, pick up Dad's AK-47 and shoot at us and get killed right there. And for most of us, Dad and the 14-year-old son were not a problem, but then here comes the 9-year-old son or the 7-year-old son to pick up the same AK-47, and now the dude on the 50 cal is saying, do I kill this 9-year-old? Like, I'll kill the 14-year-old and I'll kill Dad, but this 9-year-old doesn't know what he's doing, and that AK-47 is going to kill me. Do I kill him? And that, I think, most of my buddies really... I don't think any of us, as a combat leader over there, I had to coach my men through that. And I don't think any of us were ready for that. Like, do I kill the 9-year-old kid? Because he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just doing what Dad and older brother did. And a lot of 9-year-old kids got killed over there.